I've taken on my most ambitious FM save ever. I've started a multi-club save, meaning I am managing multiple clubs all at once. Think Red Bull and their network of clubs of Leipzig and Salzburg, except instead of Red Bull, is my own completely fictitious energy drink company, Spineless Energy. In this save, I'm taking on the role of head of football, which means I'm overseeing everything that happens across the multiple clubs with a different manager in place at each of those clubs. I'll be in charge of the tactical direction and philosophy of the teams, with my main role, of course, being the transfers and recruitment of those three teams. The aim is, of course, to try and make those clubs dominant domestically, but also sort of world domination as well. It sounds complicated, but trust me, it can really work in FM24. And let me also tell you, it's a lot of fun. So let's get into it. Come on. Now, let me first introduce you then to the two teams that we begin our adventure with. They are Spineless Wolfsburg in the Bundesliga, of course, previously just Wolfsburg. And the other team, because we begin with two, is Spineless Wolfsberger of Austria. Now, in Austria, just a quick thing too, we're actually going to be using a custom league here, which is the Alpenliga, which is a combination of the Austrian league and the Swiss league, just to make it that little bit more competitive. Now, I'm calling this project Project Empire, and it looks a bit like this. It's described as a multi-club football manager concept where sporting success is built on the success of multiple teams across multiple nations. There are a few examples of this in real life. We have Chelsea and Strasbourg, you have the City Football Group, you have Red Bull, of course, with Leipzig and Salzburg and Bragantino and the New York Red Bulls, etc. Now, there is a lot of contentious feelings towards multi-club football in the world of football these days, and how it can rip away the identity of certain teams and how it can be a bad thing for competition. And I completely understand those viewpoints. I just want to say really quickly, right off the bat here, this isn't me advocating for multi-club. This is me having some fun in a football game. If you have a look at a badge that says Spineless Wolfsburg and things like that and think it doesn't sit right with you, I sort of understand it, but also it's just a bit of fun. So just enjoy it. Anyway, back to the project at hand. Our role is to be head of football. So I've broken this down into some bullet points. We're going to oversee the recruitment of staff and players. We're going to try as much as possible to profit in the transfer market. We're going to instill a tactical identity, which will be consistent across the different clubs that we are using. We're going to ensure player progression through the clubs, which means that there will be a sort of hierarchy. And we're also going to make sure that we grow the reputation of each club in the network through sporting success. It's pretty self-explanatory, pretty simple, but I think it's good to outline these things at the start of a save because it can influence the decisions that you make throughout the save. I'm also going to try and ensure that there's consistent branding across the teams here. So using the Spineless Energy brand, which by the way is a bit of an in-joke on my Twitch channel. If you watch me live on Twitch, we've been live streaming this save now for a while. I wanted to get to a certain point before bringing it to you guys on YouTube because I think it's a really interesting save, but there is also live streams of this if you want to come and join us over there. The spineless thing is a bit of a joke. One of my managers once had the spineless personality, and then since then, people call me Spineless. So we're leaning into that, and that's where the name of our fictional sports drink, energy drink, came from. We're going to go with this very bright green color as well, just to make it really, really in your face and make it basically as hideous as possible. And then, as I mentioned before, the two teams that we begin with are Spineless Wolfsberger of Austria, and we've put a head coach in charge of them, which is Manny Fanny. Now, Manny Fanny as a manager also came from a bit of an in-joke on a previous save. He's actually a real person, but we signed him as our assistant manager, so we've brought him into this save as one of our managers that we've put in place. Likewise, over at Wolfsburg, we've got Anton Clayts, who was a bit of a save hero in a previous save, in my journeyman save, actually. He's a real player, but he's now become the manager of Wolfsburg. So we have in our hierarchy at the moment, Wolfsberger, who will be more of the feeder team, the feeder club. And we have our flagship club, which is Spineless Wolfsberger in the Bundesliga. Now, also on here, we have plans to expand, and Wolves being that team, a pretty obvious team to take over with the weird Wolfsberger, and then Wolves in the Premier League to come in as a third club later down the line. And we've also kind of had the idea that potentially maybe we could do a fourth team or even some other smaller feeder teams to bring into the network if we feel like we are achieving that world domination. So that's the premise of the save. But on the practical side, we needed to get down to business pretty much straight away because the teams that we were inheriting weren't particularly reflective of our values as a head of football. It wasn't mentioned on that vision board, but one of the strong values that I wanted to instill in all of our clubs was the use of young players. Young, exciting players that could be brought in maybe for slightly less money, and then if they need to be sold for a profit, which was one of our values. Now, Wolfsburg, the first team, are predicted to finish in 5th in the Bundesliga, which isn't too bad. Now, to begin with this as well, to make it reflective of what would actually happen in real life, we've also boosted the amount of money that both clubs would begin with. Now, if you were going to persuade Wolfsburg to lose their entire identity to become spineless Wolfsburg, you'd imagine that they'd have to be paid pretty well for it, which is kind of what we've done here. We've also ever so slightly boosted the youth facilities at the clubs too, just so we can uphold all of those values that we were talking about. So looking at the squads that we inherited, there are a few players in this Wolfsburg squad that I was quite happy to try and hold on to. The likes of Asta Vranks, who could easily be a starter and is only 21 years old, was somebody that interested me as someone to try and include as much as possible. Then going down the list, there was a few other ones that looked promising, but really, if we're going to be completely honest with it, I was going to try and extract as much value from this squad as possible, put into the coffers, to add to a transfer budget to try and rebuild this team slightly more in our own image. Now, the transfer budgets weren't adjusted, so any money that we were going to spend, we would have to raise by selling players. We have £6 million to spend for Wolfsburg and just 410k for Wolfsberger. Now, one thing you might actually see on the screen here is actually I've put a bid in from Wolfsburg to try and sign one of Wolfsberger's players. I really want there to be a lot of movement of players between the clubs that we have in our network, because that's sort of the advantage that you have here, isn't it? And you see it in real life. You think of all of the Chelsea players that either sign for Strasbourg first and then go to Chelsea, or go on loan between the clubs, etc. Same with the City group, same with Red Bull even. The amount of players that progress from Salzburg into Leipzig, and then maybe then they are sold for massive profits to go out into the world elsewhere. As a Liverpool fan, it's something that I've seen loads of. You think of Ibrahima Konate and you think of Dominic Szoboszlai, you think of all of these players, Sadio Mane even, you know, starting at Salzburg. It's something that I kind of want to bring into this save as well. So the first thing here was having a look at the Wolfsberger squad. I noticed that Adis Jasic was a decent prospect for either right back or left back. He's actually a left-footed right back, but I thought I could sign him for Wolfsburg, give £2 million to Wolfsberger, which would really help them to go and recruit other players, and then loan him back to Wolfsberger if I wanted to. So that's kind of what I've got in the works here, because when I had a look at the squad, it's similar to Wolfsberg in that there's a lot of old players. If I just sort these by age, we've got a few players over 30. You've got a 29-year-old, 28. I'd like to start bringing in some of those young players. Now, at this stage, Wolfsberger don't play in any type of European competition, and neither do Wolfsburg. So the quality of players that are going to be interested to join the clubs will be reflected of that. Better players are interested in joining you if you play in European competitions. So first season, with Wolfsburg predicted to finish 5th and Wolfsberger only predicted to finish 12th, I would have to try and do as much business as humanely possible to try and set us up to begin this journey. So into the transfer market we go. Okay then, and after our first transfer window, I have compiled the following squads. I'm going to go through the two teams, the two clubs, the two squads, and also break down what our tactical approach is going to be. So let's start with our flagship club. Let's start with Spineless Wolfsburg. And this is the starting 11 heading into our first season here. So we've actually kicked off the season. We've played 2 games. We've won 1. We've beaten Hoffenheim, and we've lost a game. We lost to Bayern Munich. In fact, Bayern Munich was the first game of the season, which is never ideal, especially away from home in a save like this. They're going to be our biggest threats eventually to winning this title. We're going to have to overcome them to become domestically dominant in Germany. Similarly, over in Austria, it's going to be Red Bull Salzburg. There's a little bit of a weird energy as well, where we'll be playing Leipzig in one league and playing Salzburg in the other league. And before I go through the squads, they are actually derbies in the game. We've called them the Energy Drink Derby against Leipzig. And then over with Wolfsberger, we have the Energy Drink Derby versus Red Bull Salzburg. I think that's called the Energy Drink Derby because we called it the Energy Drink Derby, and then the game added an extra derby on the end. But I quite like it. Either way, those are actually derby games now. And then we've made sure that both teams, Leipzig and Salzburg, are both of the teams as well. Anyway, back to this squad then. And let's have a look through the players that we've managed to bring in and which players we've kept around. Now the windows have closed, but there will definitely be a little bit more transfer business in January as well. I felt a little bit rushed in trying to get everything done, but I think we've made a start. And I also think that start is very much in the image that I wanted to start building from. So the goalkeeper, we're going to continue with Kamil Grabara, who's already here. He's a very solid goalkeeper. I don't think he'll be our goalkeeper long term because, I mean, he's 25, he's okay, he's ex-Liverpool, I suppose. He's massive, which does help as well. But for now, it wasn't a priority position. He's actually a little bit injured at the moment. He's just coming back from that injury, though. Oh, by the way, we're going to go with a 4-2-2-2 system. It's going to be quite simplistic, but I also think it's going to be the best way for us to build squads for both clubs and players to be interchangeable between those clubs too. So the 4-2-2-2 is, we know it's pretty successful in FM24. We know that the positions aren't too specialist. They're easy to recruit for. So we've just got defensive midfielders who are going to be runners. We're going to want athletes in these positions here. We're going to have inside forwards and then strikers. I've also made it, you'll notice, really symmetrical so that when I'm trying to recruit for a striker, I know that all I'm really looking for is an advanced forward. I don't need to look for one specialist target forward and one specialist poacher. They're going to be really interchangeable. And the same can be said then for the wing backs, for double ball playing defenders, 2 defensive midfielders, and then inside forwards on each side. So we also know that on the right-hand side, we're looking for a left-footed player. And on the left-hand side, we're looking for a right-footed player, ideally. Now, that can't always be the case. And I don't think it matters all that much, but in an ideal world, that's what we're looking for. And then you'll notice if I go across to Wolfsberger, exactly the same thing. It is that symmetrical 4-2-2-2, and then just gegenpress instructions to, again, just keep it really simple. So, Wolfsberg, we're going to go with Grabar in goal. At right back, we've kept around Riddle Baku. Now, he was actually very heavily wanted and scouted by other teams. He's still wanted, actually, by a couple of Bundesliga teams. And he might go, but for now, I'd like to try and hold on to him because he's really good. He's also really versatile, can play pretty much everywhere if we need him to. He's going to be our right back. Left back, I have made a signing in Wendell. Now, he's certainly not a young player, but I think for the price that we paid for him, he still sort of fits. He was only £4.2 million. He's also got Bundesliga experience where he played 6, 7, 8 years, look, for Bayer Leverkusen. And with that experience, I think it makes sense to bring him in as our left back. As we sold a couple of left backs in, Rogerio for £2.2 million has gone to Lens. He's very similar to Wendell, actually. I think Wendell has slightly more quality and he's a little bit older. But Rogerio went, and also Joachim Mæhle did also get sold. Now, he can play on both sides, but he prefers to play on the left, even though he is right-footed. But he's also moved on because we got a good bid of £5 million to move him on. He was also on pretty big wages. A lot of this was trying to move out current players to free up wages, also to bring us in transfer budget to go and spend so that we can kind of bring in our own targets. And if I go back across here, you'll see some of the players that we've sold. Some of the bigger money sales was Jonas Wind has gone to Fulham for £12 million. Kuliriakis, I'd like to have kept hold of him really, but part of our vision was that we would sell players for profit, £6 million for a player that wanted to go, because once Dortmund became interested, he was angling towards making the move. He's only 20 and can become a really good player, but £6 million, it felt like the realistic thing to do was to accept it. So he's moved on. I've told you about Mæhle. Lacroix had already gone before I took over. Of course, he's gone in real life to Crystal Palace. We sold Kaminski to Mainz for a little bit of money. Rogerio I talked about. Some of these went before. If you look at the dates on here, some of the July ones were done before I joined. Paredes for £1.5 million. I did that one. Then a few players on loan. Lots of players, you'll see at the end here, are young players that we've brought in and moved subsequently to go and play regular football at Wolfsberger. This, of course, being part of the affiliation between the two clubs, which, by the way, is officially in the game. If I go to the affiliate screen here, they are officially set up as affiliate teams of one another, meaning I can send players. If I was to go and choose a player on here, like Klinger, for example, if I go to squad, I can actually move him to the affiliate look rather than just going to the other club and trying to loan him, which I can also do. But they are officially linked together, which means they share the same board. They also share scouting knowledge, which is really important. And also says things here like being able to send young players over to Wolfsberger for first team experience, which is what I am doing. Also, you also may see a few players come through the youth intake at Wolfsberg that were actually developed by Wolfsberger before they come through in the game as well, which is quite a fun thing to look out for in the future. But back to the transfers of Wolfsberg, which kind of influences Wolfsberger in turn as well as the flagship club and the feeder club. I've brought in a lot of young players, lots of who I've sent to Wolfsberger. The most money spent is on Rooney Bargi. Now, we know all about Rooney Bargi. I think he just fits. Now, thinking about making a profit in the future, thinking about this focus on young players, he's 20 years old. He fits as well playing as an inside forward on that right-hand side, cutting in on his left foot. So very excited to bring him in. He cost us £20 million. I've tried to be sensible with the transfers. There are a few future clauses included, but I've tried to be realistic because, as I mentioned, I want to try and be I want to keep this financially responsible in a way, which is tricky for me to say. But Rooney Bargy for £20 million, I think makes sense. And then the rest of the players, very cheap look. Nobody else over 10 million, which I think is really good for some of the names that we've managed to bring in. Nicolo Tresoldi for £7 million. He's come in, a future striker, 20 years old. I've then shipped him on to Wolfsberger to go and be one of their starting strikers for this year. Excited about him. Nathan Zezi comes in as a backup centre-back, only 19 years old. Hopefully his picture gets me every single time. One, because he looks like a child, and two, because, and then also the face that he's pulling, which is hilarious. He is going to be a backup centre-back for us. Wendell I talked about, he's not quite the young player, but is going to be a bit of quality in our defence. Nelson Viper, the Viper, up front, is going to be a player starting for us, I think, at Wolfsburg this year. He's going to be the direct replacement for Jonas Wind. And they're quite similar in profile in that they are both pretty tall. I think Viper is 6'4" and Jonas Wind is 6'3", and they're both quite similar, but the thing that Viper has going for him is that he's only 19 years old and can develop into a lethal striker in FM24. So he comes in for £4 million. I've also signed Junior Krupi for £3 million. Loads of potential on him if he plays football, I've found, from using him in other saves. That's where this is perfect, because I can give him first team football in the first season, but but it won't compromise Wolfsburg, because I can send him to Wolfsberger and he can be a starter there and hopefully develop from there for the future. And it's a long-term plan, isn't it? It's a long-term plan to bring in players that can actually influence the save later on down the line. Even maybe when we go to a third club, if we bring Wolves in as a third club in our multi-club network, if you like. Here's Jasic, who I've signed and then loaned back to Wolfsberger, as I mentioned before. You can see his loan down the bottom here, look. Matisse Tal, of course, at Spurs in real life at the moment, is going to be a starter for us this year. I've loaned him from Bayern, and we're paying for the pleasure as well, about £3.6 million. But the best part is that we can sign him for £19 million permanently next year. Now, loans is something, I will do loans, but ultimately, I'd much prefer to be developing my own players. So kind of where I do a loan, I'd like to be thinking about, am I going to be able to sign them permanently eventually? Matisse Tal, that's very much a possibility now. We will probably need to go and qualify for Europe to be able to afford to pay £19 million for him. But we spent £20 million on Rooney Bargy. So you think paying 20 for Tal next year should be viable enough. So I'm hoping that we'll have the money to do that. If not, it's one season. It is what it is. And I think he'll improve the team in the meantime anyway, won't he? Similar story, actually, with Christian Aslani, who I've signed on loan from Inter. He also has an £11 million optional fee, which I think is really good business. He will be one of our starting defensive midfielders here. And I actually think £11 million would be a bargain for him even now. And hopefully he develops a little bit too, because he's only 22 as well. He ticks a lot of boxes in that regard. And then finally, as a little bit more panic towards the end of this window here, I have loaned Samu Omorodion as a striker option. I was looking for players that I could sign permanently. I wasn't able to put a future fee into Samu's contract. However, depending on his value, it could be something that we talk about in the future too. He is another young, really good player. In fact, I need to go and change his name in here to simply Samu, which is what he wants to be known by in real life. I think it's Agahauer is his other name in there, but he wants to just go, but yeah, it is, look, he wants to just go by Samu. So we're going to do that. Hopefully we can make it permanent in the future, but there isn't actually a clause involved in his contract. That sets up the team. We did sell on a lot of players. It was £39 million going out, £54 million spent. I don't think it's too bad, with some of it being paid in the future as well. Players like Rooney Bargy, look, we're going to pay another $1 million for 3 seasons and another $2.5 million in a couple more installments too, to spread the cost a little bit. The only other thing I didn't mention here was I also loaned over Asta Vranks to Wolfsberger to go and be a starter for them, as well as Bent Dardai. But we will look at those transfers in a second. Before that, let me show you the squad here and who's probably going to be the starters in this squad. So Grabara in goal, with Baku at right back, Wendell at left back. Zezga and Bornau were both here before and going to be starters, but Zezi is going to be an option at left-sided centre-back. But actually, Zezga is massive, 6'4", look, so he kind of fits the bill for that regard. And Bornau is somebody I've used loads in the past because he's also 6'3". The two of them I think will be fine, although I think upgrading them to young, exciting players in the future could definitely be part of the plan too. In the midfield, Maximilian Arnold, one of my favourite FM players over the past 3-4 years probably, because he's so brilliant at set pieces. He's got 17 free kick taking and also whips in a decent corner at 15 too. Weirdly, left-footed takers seem to just be better for me as well. So he's someone I've used loads in the past. He's a bit of experience in our midfield. He's going to start alongside Aslani. And then in the attack, very exciting attack actually. We've got Bargy on the right-hand side, Talon Viper as the strikers, both new for this year. And then we're going to go with Patrick Wimmer as the left-sided inside forward as well. He actually had a lot of interest from the Premier League. Everton, I think it was, especially looking at signing him. If we were to get a big bid for Wimmer, I think I probably would accept it to try and maybe sign someone. I was going to say younger, but he's actually 23, but maybe someone with slightly more pace could be interesting there. But for now, he's going to be our starting left winger for this year. And then the bench includes players like Zezi and Samu, as well as players that were already here before we arrived. Let's go over to Wolfsberger then to run through this squad before we go through and play some games and see how this first season is going to go. This is the squad going into season 1 in Austria. We've got Gusselbauer and Polster as the two keepers who were both here beforehand. They're going to stay in goal. Jasic, I've signed, is going to play on the right-hand side or sometimes on the left as well. We've sold him and then loaned him back here because it gave us a little bit of money and some wages to be able to go and spend on other players. And I felt like that was an important little workaround that we managed to make happen here. Two decent centre-backs in Wimmer and Baumgartner, who were both here beforehand. And then Schurter was also a left-back that was here before as well. Astor Ranks is here on loan. He's going to be one of our defensive midfielders. He's probably good enough to get games for Wolfsburg, but maybe not completely consistently. Certainly not going to play every single game, whereas here at Wolfsberger, he will be probably the best player in there. What I keep doing is going to the player search and adding the filter for Wolfsburg players and then just seeing which players are interested in coming on loan to us by putting this on here so that I can see what is the best player that would technically want to come and play for us. And there's like Nelson Viper would actually happily go on loan to Wolfsberger at this stage, which is good because it means we're going to be able to do lots of movement between the two clubs. Zezi is another one that would come on loan here. So it's definitely going to be something I'm going to utilize in this save. So in the midfield, it will be Ranks and then Altanashvili. There's also a couple of other youngsters. Omic is a decent young midfielder as well, but it's probably going to be those two as starters. And then in the attack, this is exciting. Junior Krupi on loan. I'm going to change him. I'm going to mold him into a left winger for the future. I'm just thinking, feels already like we've got quite a few strikers. And Junior Krupi, we don't play with a number 10 in this system. And I do wonder is he good enough, fast enough? He's still so young. I just think we might have better options if we mold him into a left winger from here as well. Do it early so that he can pick it up and use all of that youthful adaptability that he's got to make him an inside forward. And I actually think that might suit him quite nicely. So we're going to do that early, which is why he's in there now, even though he's only got half a grey star. And then it's going to be Rocher on the right-hand side, who looks all right. Trasoldi to lead the line with the incoming Alexandra Pato. We needed another striker. This guy, he's a legend, isn't he? He's on a free transfer, and I actually think he's going to be all right for us because in the first 3 games, he scored 3 goals. Look at that for a start here. 7.7 from the Brazilian legend that is Alexander Pato. We've got some okay options on the bench as well, but that's going to be the 2 squads. We've actually made a really good start in the Alpenliga as well. It is a 7-1 win against Basel in the first game. Look, Pato scored twice. Trasoldi scored twice. We then won 3-0 against Lugano. And I actually, at this stage, was thinking we're going to just walk the league here. But we then did draw away from home at FC Zurich to bring us back down to earth a little bit there. But that's the transfer business. There is actually another player in here that I want to mention. I've signed Boat Many on a free transfer and also Livano Comenencia on a very, very cheap signing as well, who looks like he might have a bit of potential too. I've loaned him out actually to Austria Lustenau, but for 96k, just one that I wanted to mention as an incoming as well. I think that pretty much sums it up. The ones that I've highlighted here were my signings. So it's 525k spent, and we used that £2 million that I've sort of engineered by selling Jasic to Wolfsburg and then loaning him back. Maybe taking advantage a little bit of the affiliation between the two teams. But I think it stands us in good stead for a couple of good seasons here. And I'm going to go and play those seasons now and be back to let you know how season number 1 has gone at both of our clubs. Okay, welcome back to the end of season 1, where Spineless Wolfsberger, our feeder club, have only gone and won the league. They've won the Alpenliga in their first season of this save. It is a 73-point season. It's a 21 win out of 34 game season. It is a thoroughly impressive one, but Salzburg were nothing like the threat that we thought they were going to be. We thought that they were going to be big favourites to win this league, but they ended up losing 5 games, including once to us, and drawing 10 games. Only 19 wins out of 34 games. That's not title winning form. And even though we weren't amazed, like 3 losses, 10 draws isn't exactly an amazing record. It's good enough, but 73 points winning this league feels like a low total. When Salzburg dropped off, when Salzburg weren't as good as we thought they were going to be, Wolfsberger were right there and they've won the league in season number 1. It's an outrageous start, and I wanted to start with them because of just how impressive this actually is. Nicolo Tresoldi was the second top goal scorer in the league. He got 19 goals. Baumgartner was third best player in the league. One of our centre-backs actually scored a few goals himself, actually, with his 13 goals, look, because he's 6'2" and's got 15 jumping reach. It's an outrageous over performance, really. And I'll just show you one game. If we just choose a game in here to give you a bit of a feel of what we're managing to achieve then with Spineless Wolfsberger. Here's a 4-1 win away at Blau-Weiß Linz, who are not a terrible team, but we restricted them at home to just 4 shots on target, 0.82 XG, whereas we are clinical. Only a 1.48 XG, but players like Tresoldi and Krupi, by the way, now can very much play on this left-hand side, has picked up that position we were training him into, is 18 and scoring goals in this league. I'm going to show you the goals because in action, it's a beautiful thing. You can see that the team picked there was very much pretty close to the one that I talked about before the season had kicked off. Here's the first goal from Asta Vranks. Let's just slow this down ever so slightly. He smashed in. He's had a wonderful season playing defensive midfielder here as well. There's Altanashvili into Boutmene, one of our free transfer signings. Vranks over the top look. Tresoldi in behind. Hits it first time in front of what is pretty much a car park there. But 2-0. That was in, and then 3-0 actually in the first half here as well. Krupi picks it up and he curls it in, cutting in off that left-hand side into the top corner. Look, it's been a joy to watch. So we actually scored another goal right at the end. That actually sums it up perfectly. Baumgartner scoring the header, look. That this game in itself is pretty much summing up what our season has been. Tresoldi with all of those goals. In all competitions, he's scored 21 goals in 35, 19 in 34. On loan from Wolfsburg. Now his value has shot up. He's 20 years old. He's in the under-21s team for Italy. It's a great starting point for everything that we're trying to achieve in this save, isn't it? To go through some of the other stats of some of the other players too, if we just sort this by goals, we had Tresoldi top goal scorer. It was actually Baumgartner with the second most amount of goals with 13. Pato got 10 in 23 starts. Vranks got 9 goals from midfield. Krupi was 7 off that new position off the left-hand side. He's got a long way to go, but he's got all the potential in the world. Our coaches are tipping him to be really, really good. He's already a leading player for this league, but you'd imagine that with this type of potential, he could actually go on and really kick on. And actually, looking at his profile here, attributes-wise, he already has made a lot of progress, and he's only 18 years old, which is really cool. And then if we just sort by average rating, you see the best performers in there, look. I'm already excited for what we can do next year. And next year, we've actually got a bit of money to spend, £9 million to go and improve on this team. And of course, after winning the league, we've actually qualified for the Champions League. So we go straight into the league phase by winning this league with £20 million in prize money. You actually get qualifying rounds for the Champions League if you finish second, and then Europa League, and then downwards, Conference League from that point on. We're going straight into the Champions League proper with Wolfsberger, which is definitely ahead of schedule. And now we kind of need to make a decision about which of these loan players do we keep. Does Asta Vranks go and get into the Wolfsberger? Does Asta Vranks go back and get into the Wolfsburg team for next year? Similar story for Tresoldi. Do we give him a go at Wolfsburg? Krupi, I think we'll probably keep Krupi here for another year, but these are the head of football decisions that I'm making now based on this season. But before we do that transfer window, I need to tell you how Wolfsburg, our flagship team, have done in season number 1. And they have also overachieved, if you like. They finished second. Now, predictably, they didn't win the league because this league, it includes FC Bayern, of course. Bayern Munich only lost 3 games, didn't draw any, and won 31 out of their 34 games. They are going to be a ridiculously difficult team to overcome to win this title, but a very, very impressive second place finish. Now, we were predicted to finish 5th in this league, so finishing second is it's not outside the realms of possibility. I actually think the achievement from Wolfsberger, after being predicted, I think it was in the end 10th, after our transfer business was concluded, to then go and win the league is a massive overachievement, but it did rely on Salzburg dropping off quite a lot. In this league, in the Bundesliga for Wolfsburg, Bayern then didn't drop off, but we've managed to get ourselves also into the Champions League for next year. Now, our players feature a little bit less in the player stats on here. It's actually a lot of Bayer Leverkusen players in there who finished third. We finished above them by 16 points clear of them as well. But that's not to say a lot of our players weren't really impressive. This is the team, and you may notice that there are 1 or 2 extra players in there. Now, of course, we've had the January window come and go. At Wolfsberger, I didn't sign anybody in that window. At Wolfsburg, I did. those players that I signed, I'll show you the transfers here, did actually really help us to kick on for the second half of this season. And they are Eduardo Quaresma for less than £1 million from Sporting. The fact that it was just so cheap meant that this was one that I just couldn't resist doing. Less than £1 million for a player that fits our ethos. He's only 23, is an up-and-coming youngster in the world of football right now. He's good enough to start for us, or at the very least be a really able backup for us. And it makes financial sense because it was so cheap and we could definitely sell him for a profit in the future. So we brought him in. He actually played a fair few games for us as well. Look, 16 games in that second half of the season. And those were 16 starts as well. Didn't score a goal and only had a 6.84 average rating, but still impressive and useful for us for less than £1 million. And then secondly, Sverre Halset Naipan. I've been trying to sign him from the start of the save, but he just wasn't interested in joining us. Perhaps until he was 18 years old. He then turned 18 in December, look, and then from that point, he was actually wanting to come and join us. So for £5 million to sign an FM24 wonder kid, it just makes sense, doesn't it? It was slightly more than I was hoping it was going to be, but in the second half of the season, 15 games, I've been using him. I'm not really sure where to use Naipan in the long run. Do we use him as this winger type, inside forward, where I'm not quite sure he has the pace for it, the physicals for it, but he's a very clever player? Or do we play him as a defensive midfielder where I'm not really sure he's got the discipline or the tackling or all of the defensive attributes for it? He's kind of in between the two. He's a central midfielder, which isn't a role we use. And I don't really want to change what the roles that we use. We're going to have to try and mold him perhaps into, I think maybe ultimately more of a defensive midfield, like a runner in the midfield or a controller of the tempo, rather than what is really a striker that plays on the wing. These inside forwards make up basically 4 strikers that we use. I'm not quite sure he's that, but that is where we've been using him for this half of a season, where he did score 5 goals, get 4 assists, 2 player of the matches, and a really good average rating. So maybe he can play there, but I think long term, if we want to get the most out of him, probably dropping him down to this defensive midfield spot is what I'm going to do. I want to think outside the box quite a lot in terms of players and where they play and tactics and the roles that they fulfill in a team. I want to experiment with a few things in this save too, because I think this type of save lends itself to that a little bit, because I could now go and maybe say maybe it's not a great example for Naipan, but say he wasn't quite ready to play for us here and he needs to go and learn a new position. We could go and send him to Wolfsberger and he could really learn that position in a league that has slightly less pressure, because the opposition he'll be playing against aren't quite as strong. It's kind of what we've done with Astor Ranks this year, where we've used him in this defensive midfield spot and he's thrived in there and actually chipped in with goals as well, because the role that this defensive midfielder fulfills in this system isn't tied as, it's not like an anchor in this defensive midfield spot. They do roam and they do get forward, and they kind of, the positional interplay between the two of them means that one goes forward, one stays back, and they kind of control things from here. So eventually I do definitely want, Ranks is a good example actually, I do want players with great stamina, great work rate, and also decent physicals to get up and down the pitch. So I'd probably suggest that that's going to be the future for Sverre Halset Naipan. But for now, he's had a really good second half of the season, and the team overall have had a great second half of the season. A great season overall. We finished second. In the Cups, we didn't do particularly great. We lost went out in the quarterfinal. Again, it's Bayern Munich that knocked us out in the Pokal, and that was actually just those 2 competitions that we were in for this year. I'll go to a game. Let's show you some goals. What was maybe a highlight game in this season? Let's in fact go to the final game of the season, another 4-1 win actually, and it was away at Gladbach, and I think this one sums us up quite nicely, because the goal scorers are Matisse Tal with 2 and 2 disallowed ones in there as well. Rooney Bargi from the right hand side, assisted by Viper, and then Samu off the bench with the final goal in there. I'll show you them. Samu, by the way, he's not been particularly happy with not being a starter, and Porto haven't been particularly happy with him not being a starter, but we'll see what we can do in the summer transfer window. Matisse Tal, on the other hand, I have already made his transfer permanent, because at £19 million, I just felt like it was one that we just couldn't ignore. Similar actually with Aslani in the midfield. He's been great this year. I've made his £11 million transfer permanent too. So that's already £30 million spent for next summer, but Tal's so good. Look at that goal that he's just scored there. Could not resist doing that. Here he is down the right hand side too, doing a little 1-2 with Baku into the box, smashing her. Like, he was the player that set that goal up for Rooney Bargi to put in. I think that one counted, although it's not showing at the top here, but I'm pretty sure that counted, even though he looks like he might be offside. Viper into Bargi. There's Samu adding the 4th goal. So as I mentioned, I've already started some of that transfer business. Aslani is coming in, Tal is coming in permanently, and we're also signing Paul Wanner from Bayern Munich for 500k. That was actually done last summer, but only going to go through this summer when Paul Wanner is, I think it's when he's old enough, or maybe when he's not on loan. I think he's been on loan at Heidenheim. So when that loan finishes, we sign him permanently. And I think probably with Wanner, we'll probably loan him to Wolfsberger, give him some first team experience. So some transfer business done already. We've got £14 million to go and spend here, which means we will probably need to go and do some sales to finance the summer on top of these deals that have already gone through here. But with us now in the Champions League with both clubs, I'm really hoping and expecting the level of player that are interested in joining us to go up a notch. And hopefully we'll be able to bring in a few of those wonder kids from around Europe to try and really set the foundations for this save, because if we've got two full teams of basically wonder kids, the future will be looking very bright, won't it? So let's go and see if we can do that. Let's go and do another transfer window and I'll be back. Okay, welcome back then. Not just after the transfer window has concluded, but also we've gone about halfway through our second season here. It's actually the 17th of February, which means I've got a lot to catch you up on the progress of both teams in this save. So we'll start with Wolfsberger. We'll start with the team that is the feeder club in the network, but also the team that won their league last year, but is now a fantastic club in their own right, competing in the Champions League, etc., etc. This is the squad at the moment. Now, there's a lot of new names in here. I'm going to be there's a lot to catch you up on, because as is the nature of this save, it's all about recruitment and transfers and trying to build the best possible network of clubs. And that's meant that I've been really busy in the transfer windows. One of the things I suggest, if you enjoy this save, this video, please try and catch a stream where we do a transfer window, because it usually takes 2 or 3 streams to conclude the transfer window. It includes spreadsheets. It includes all sorts of, if this player is here, then we move this player to here. Maybe we could sign this player, but we need the funds, so we need to free up, so we need to sell this player. And there's a lot of logistics going on. And I actually think it's Football Manager is very, very best. So if you want to watch this live, I really suggest try and find one of the streams where we do the transfer business. Also, if you want to go back and watch any of the live streams from this save, the Clayts 2 channel, which will be linked in the description of today's video, has all of the live streams on there from over on Twitch, here on YouTube, for you to go and watch if you wanted to do that type of thing. Anyway, let's have a look at the squad to begin with, where we have in goal a new goalkeeper by the name of Dennis Simon. Another very commonly signed Football Manager goalkeeper. He's one of the best young goalies that you can go and sign. He started FM24 at about 18 years old. He's now into our second season now. He's now 20 years old, and we picked him up for 9.5 million, which is a lot of money to go and spend with Wolfsberger, but we did get decent money because we're in the Champions League. He has now played 20 games, conceded 13, got a really good average rating, actually. He is one that I'm thinking will start here at Wolfsberger, but perhaps we'll move him on to Wolfsburg in the future to go and replace the goalie there. Or maybe if we do bring in that third team, maybe he could end up going to there in the future. All of the signings that we make, I'm thinking they'll start at this club in this team, and then eventually maybe we'll move them on to another one. At right back, we have a loanee in Noah Mikic, a very decent young right back, who I actually signed for Wolfsburg for £1.5 million and then loaned him over to Wolfsberger. So he played 4 games for us, look, at Wolfsburg before we loaned him to Wolfsberger, where he's now playing and is more likely to be a starter because I did a bit of a switch around at right back, which we'll get onto in a second. I will show you the transfer screen so you can see all of the business, but I kind of want to start on the tactic screen here so that you can see all of the players that make up each squad, because I think that's also important in this type of thing here. Now, one thing I will do quickly here before we continue is to pop in a starter, which is Tresoldi in here, because he is usually very much the starting player in this team. So Mikic a right back. We've then got a new left back by the name of Alex Valla. He is signed from Barcelona, or the Barcelona youth teams, for £1 million and only just joined at the end of January, but he's now going to be our starting left back, with Zezi and Querfeld as our new central defensive partnership. You remember last season we had the Baumgartner and Wimmer as starting centre-backs, and they were already here in the save. And I did talk about wanting to maybe move them on and bring in our own players, good young players. Leopold Querfeld is one of those. He's Austrian. He's only 22. He's actually a little bit upset because we've sold one of our star players, Vinicius Tobias, which we'll get onto in a second when I'm talking about right-backs. But that's because I've sold Tobias to Wolfsburg. But we'll come on to that. Querfeld will be partnered by Zezi, who you may remember we had at Wolfsburg, and now he's on loan at Wolfsberger. He didn't start a lot of games for Wolfsburg, the backup left-sided defender. Now, though, at Wolfsberger, he's a starter and has started 23 games so far this season. One of those that I'm going to keep an eye on how he develops. If he develops great, he'll go back to Wolfsburg. If he is looking like he's never going to be a starter there, we'll probably make him permanent here at Wolfsburg, and we've got the option to do either of those things at this stage. Right now, he's performing well. He's got France under 21 caps as well. So he's definitely one for the future. And then into the midfield, we've got a new signing in Oscar Zambrano, who has signed. He's a 21-year-old Ecuadorian that we've signed from Ecuador. He was actually on loan at Hull City and did quite well, look. And then he's gone back to Ecuador, and we've signed him for £3.1 million. And he's not usually a starter, but could definitely be in there if we need him to. It's usually Comenencia's spot in the team, but Comenencia has picked up an injury at the moment, sprained knee ligaments. He's played 32 games. I think I showed you him when I signed him for less than 100k. And then he's been on loan last season, and then this year has kicked on a lot and is definitely worthy of being a starter. He's actually our captain as well, which is quite cool to see. I see him as a bit of a Gini Wijnaldum type of player in our midfield. Can actually also play right back, look, and has actually played right back quite a lot of times. He's one of our midfielders, as well as Daniel Dagger, one of the best African wonder kids that you can sign on the game. He's not looking great at the moment, but I'm hoping that he does develop in the future. He signed for £1.2 million. I signed him for Wolfsburg and then loaned him to Wolfsburg, another player that's gone between the two clubs already. Although I signed him for Wolfsburg knowing that I was going to send him to Wolfsburg. It's just I didn't want to or didn't have the money to spend £1.2 million on him. Or a lot of the time, if players aren't interested in going to Wolfsburg, I then have to sign them for Wolfsburg, and then they are interested in going on loan to Wolfsburg. So that's one way of kind of getting around that as well, which actually might have been the case for Daniel Dagger. Either way, he's one of our midfield options. Another one is Fabian Krivak, only 20 years old. He's brilliant, by the way. Never signed him before in an FM save, but for 800k, again, signed him for Wolfsburg, loaned him to Wolfsburg. I think he looks like he's going to be pretty. He's already well established as a midfielder and is only 20. Doesn't even have youth caps for Croatia. I'm sure he will end up getting youth caps for Croatia. He is listed as a wonder kid, so he feels like one that I've kind of unearthed naturally in this save, which is quite cool. And then in the attack, a very different attack. Paul Wanner did join Wolfsburg and then promptly get loaned to Wolfsburg. And he's been great this year. Got 10 goals, look, in 29 games. João Rego is a newer signing. We spent big on him. £14 million we spent on João Rego. And he's going to be our left-sided inside forward, cutting in on that right foot. Another player that I've used in previous saves and has just gone on to be brilliant. So the sooner you can get these players into the network, the better is the way that I'm seeing this. If we have to spend money on them, that's fine, because I think in the future they're going to be worth way more than just 14 million. I can see João Rego going on to play for Wolfsburg and maybe even Wolves in the future if we were to do an extra, if we were to add them to the network, especially being Portuguese. You can kind of see that as a route for the future, couldn't you? He's another that we signed in the January, so he's only played, I think it's 9 games so far, but he's only a new signing here, really. It was Rego, Zambrano, and then Martinez as a youngster, Vala, all signed in the Jan. Oh, and Zeno de Bast as well in the Jan. We've actually spent the most money we've spent on anybody, although for some reason he wasn't in the team here. I need to go back. He usually has Querfeld's place in the team. Zeno de Bast, I've spent £25 million to go and sign him. I really felt like we needed a little bit of extra quality in defence, so spending big on a player that I've seen go on and play for massive teams around Europe in FM saves. 22 years old, he's got caps for Belgium already, 6'3". Felt like he was worth it. And like I said, we had decent money to go and spend, so I spent the money on him. And then up front, we've got Trusoldi still here, loaned him for a second season, and he's got 22 goals in 31 games. You'll notice there is no Junior Krupi. I've allowed Junior Krupi to go back to Wolfsburg because we've used him actually at Wolfsburg this year, and we'll get onto that squad in a second. And then alongside him, though, Jean-Philippe Mateta was available on a free, and he's regrown his hair apparently in this photo, and I couldn't really resist signing him. I kind of was planning to use him as a backup, to be honest with you, but since we put him in the team, he's just started scoring goals. He's got 10 goals in 11 games for us, so he's going to be one of the boys. He's 28, so he's not quite one of those young players that we've been aiming for. However, he is still likely to be transfer profit for us because he was on a free transfer. So it still makes financial sense, in my opinion, anyway. And that pretty much makes up the team, with a few extra signings in there like Paris Brunner, who is a young striker that we've signed from Monaco. Yasser Asprilla, who we've signed for a decent amount of money, £4.7 million from Girona. Rodrigo Mora on loan from Porto, and then one or two other ones in there that make up the rest of this squad. In terms of performances with Wolfsburger, it's another good season, but it's a little bit more like what I expected last season to be like. And what I mean by that is that Salzburg have been a lot better than they were last year. That last year, we won the league mainly because they weren't very good. This year, we're going toe-to-toe with them after 23 games. So with 11 games still to go, we're a point behind them, meaning that we're not going to be favourites to win this league. And you'd imagine that Wolfsburg should be able to kick on and get this done. But we're going to be there or thereabouts if they mess up. We've only lost 3 games. We lost at home to Salzburg, and Salzburg have only lost 2 games. One of them was to us. We beat them. We've both managed to win away from home against our rivals here, so which is a bit odd, but that's kind of the way that it's gone. They've actually only dropped points in 4 games. Both of us actually have only dropped points in 4 games. We lost one of the ones that they drew, though, is the only difference here. It's all to play for with 11 games to go. But generally, if we finish in the top 2, I'm pretty much happy. If we could go and sneak another title in, that'd be glorious. But it kind of does depend on Salzburg's results, really. In the Champions League in our debut season, we just missed out on qualification to the playoffs through the league phase. We ended up on the same points as Bayern Munich, who finished as the 24th team out of 24 that can qualify for the next round. It was goal difference. We actually got a -6 goal difference because we had some tough results. We lost 5-2 to Man City. I mean, imagine having to play Man City with Wolfsberger. It's not ideal, is it? We also lost 5-2 to Barcelona and 4-1 to Chelsea. So our goal difference was in the mud. We beat Red Star, we beat Sociedad, and we beat Ludogorets. So those 3 wins in games that you'd expect us to, it kind of comes down to we should probably have done better against Besiktas. And if we beat Besiktas, we're through to the next round. So it gives us something to play for next year. But our Champions League journey did finish at the league phase with Wolfsberger. And that, I think, sees us pretty much ready to go and jump over to Wolfsburg to show you how we've done with there. I just want to also show you some of the outgoing players because we have sold a few players for decent money. We've brought in £34 million, look, which has allowed us to go and spend £70 million. We did get decent money to go and spend because of qualifying for the Champions League. So it's £36 million outgoing, which I think is okay for a Champions League team. It's not silly, and I have continued this responsible approach to signings. But that was very much helped by players like Vinicius Tobias going to Wolfsburg, who was actually a player that we signed in the summer for £4.4 million and then sold him on to Wolfsburg because Wolfsburg, I realised we needed a new right back. I brought in Vinicius Tobias, and Vinicius Tobias was going to be a great option for that. So I gave £10 million, sort of an arbitrary number that I think is relatively fair, make up a transfer fee and then send the player over and swap and send a bit of money the other way. I also sold Baumgartner for about £7 million in total. Both centre-backs look going for over £10 million combined. Gottelbauer, the goalkeeper, replaced by Dennis Simon, of course. Scherzer, the left-back, replaced by Alex Valler. Fofana was a centre-back I signed on for a free transfer that I sold for £2.5 million. So good money and good recruitment tactics being utilised here. And I think we've got the club into a really good spot. And the same can be said with Wolfsburg. Now, before I go into this Wolfsburg squad and show you how they're doing in the league, how they're doing in the Champions League, how the transfer windows have gone, I just want to let you know how I'm playing this save, because I know that it'll be a question that a lot of you ask. How are you managing to manage 2 teams in one save? And so let me answer that just for you now. So we are technically the manager of both teams here. I've added custom managers to both teams. We have Clayts, we have Manny Fanny. But I've simplified the process because we're using the same tactical systems in both teams. So I don't spend ages trying to do new tactics. Instead, it's about recruitment and planning for transfers. When it comes to match days, I'm using the Clayts Kajuro skin, which gives me the option of using instant results. And instead of playing both games, I pick one of the 2 games to play and one of the 2 games to instant result. And that way I'm kind of playing it as if I'm playing just one save and playing every game. But I'm dropping into each team and making sure that I play the important games for whichever one and instant result the other one, if that makes sense. With instant resulting, it doesn't count as holidaying. So look, Anton Clayts has had 0 days on holiday and he's technically played 74 games so far, which about a season and a half is every single game, because it does count for him when you do those instant results, which doesn't count if you were to go on holiday, which is why I'm avoiding doing that. So I did just want to explain that to you guys in case you want to go and try this yourself. And as always, the day 1 save file for this is on my Patreon if you wanted to go and pick this one up and do it yourself, or if you wanted to go and start your own ones, I highly recommend it. Go and set up your own multi-club network because it's so much fun to go and do so. I've also added things like the custom badges that I've created and custom kits and things. I've also added those to my Patreon as well in case you wanted to go and do this yourself, because like I say, I highly recommend it. Creating your own universe, your own world it's so rewarding in a game like Football Manager, honestly. Anyway, let me update you on how and what I've been doing with Wolfsburg as opposed to Wolfsberger. Now, we are currently sitting on the 17th of February in 2nd place in the league. We were 2nd place last year. It's where we finished, and we're 2nd place this year. Although this year, there is actually a genuine title race going on. We're 3 points behind Bayern Munich, but we actually have a better goal difference, and we are sticking with them a lot more than we were doing last year. It's been a highly impressive season. And I'm not going to lie to you, we spent quite a lot of money to get this much closer. If we just look at the player stats here, Nelson Viper has got 16 goals. Rooney Bargy off that right-hand side has got 12 goals. Player of the match is Nelson Viper. He's been He's been an extraordinaire from one of our striking spots. He's now listed as a wonder kid, and he's actually scored 26 goals in 52 games. So 1 in 2. He's a 1 in 2 striker for us now at 20 years old. This year, 16 goals in 22 league appearances, 25 goals in all competitions. The team now looks like this. Now, there are 1 or 2 new names in here. Going through them, we have a new goalkeeper by the name of Noah Atabolu, who is one of my favourite young players from around the world, young goalkeepers from around the world, actually, IRL. And that has actually been something that's influenced my decisions for signings in the save. There's a weird vibe of player that my Twitch chat will be able to try and explain probably better than I can here, where a player has to fit this weird set of criteria that I have in my mind that I can't even quite put into words. But if I like them in real life, and if they're young and exciting as a player in game, then we'll sign them. And if they don't quite fit those weird vibes, I don't sign them. But Noah Atabolo is a great example of a player that I'm excited to bring in as a new player in the save. He's 23. He's got a cap for Germany now. And I can see him being our goalkeeper for years and years and years. So we spent £11.75 million bringing him in, and he replaces the outgoing Grabara. I'll show you all of the players that we've sold afterwards, because I don't think we need to spend as long on those players. Rather, I want to spend more time on the players that we've brought in. In our defence now, we have a new right back. I needed to sign a new right back because at the end of the summer, we sold Riddle Baku for £45 million, or rising to £45.5 million. We sold him to Liverpool, which meant we needed a new right back. And Vinicius Tobias wasn't the immediate replacement. Instead, that was Thiago Santos. But then comparing Thiago Santos to Vinicius Tobias, who is one of my favourite Football Manager players. I made a video all about how much I love Vinicius Tobias, by the way, as well as a list of other players that have been my favourite players to use in this year's game. Check that video out. It might even be a card that's above me here or here at this point in the video if I remember to do so. He was doing so well at Wolfsberger that I've decided to make the change. I've sent Noah Mikic on loan to Wolfsberger, and I've brought in Tobias to come and be our starter here, and I sent them £10 million for the pleasure to do so. So he's going to be a starter with Santos as the backup now. We're going to go with Quaresma, who I signed last January, alongside a new centre-back, Robert Renan, who was our new captain at the club. He's got good leadership. He's only 22, and he's just a really solid left-sided, left-footed centre-back for us. We spent £13 million on him. He was playing his football on loan in Saudi Arabia last year, on loan from Zenit St. Petersburg. So he comes in as our left-sided centre-back. And then a recent addition is Sergio Gomez, come in and play as a left-back. Now, the former City, former Sociedad left-back, he was at Anderlecht, I think, before that. He was at Barcelona and then Dortmund. I remember him being a wonder kid when he was playing for, I think, was it before Dortmund? Was it from Barcelona? I remember signing him back in 2018, 2019 anyway, and he was a great player to sign in FM. He's going to come in and be our left back. He's not really he's not the pacey left back that you might expect, but he was the best of the options that I could sign. It was him or Miguel Gutierrez that I was choosing between to come and play left back for us, but Gomez gets the nod. We signed him in January. In our midfield, Aslani signed permanently, and then I went big on a player that I really wanted to sign, that vibe that I talked about before. Angelo Stiller is right up there with that. He's so highly rated and so good in real life. And then the ability to, having the chance to bring him in a save like this, it just felt right. So we spent £27 million to sign him from Stuttgart. And I think it's going to be £27 million well spent, because he's only 24 and he's top quality and he's natural in that position that we want to use him in. If I just show you and highlight the attributes for it, he excels in a lot of them, doesn't he? So excited to have him in there alongside Aslani. We've also got Astavranks back here at the club now, and he's played quite a few games too. I've decided not to loan him to Wolfsberger for this year, instead to use him at Wolfsburg, and he's played a lot of games for us, as well as Naipan, who either plays on the wing or does play in this defensive midfield spot. He's had 15 starts here, so really good backup options in that midfield. It's usually, though, I'd probably say the first choice too is Stiller and Aslani. And then in front of those, we've got Rooney Bargi still here on the right-hand side. Had a great year so far, 16 goals. Junior Krupi had that year at Wolfsberger on loan, did great, and now he's back at the flagship club, and he's also doing pretty well this year. 5 goals, 6 assists, 7.03 average rating, developing him as this left winger. And then the strike force is the same as last year. Tal signed permanently, and then Viper, I showed you him before with his goals that he scored. I've also got some other signings on the bench. Julio Cesar Soler is the backup left back. Mastantuono can turn out to be one of the best players on the game if nurtured correctly. He's on loan at the moment, but joins permanently for £4.9 million when the transfer window opens in the summer from River Plate. I've also signed Yasin Ozcan as a backup centre-back. Zivkovic is a backup centre-back. Wendell's still here. And then some new gens that have come through. One of these, by the way, I've signed this guy. He's 16. He's 6'5". He's Austrian, and I think he's going to be one of the best strikers on the game. We signed him on a free transfer from Wacker Innsbruck in Austria, and just look how good he already is. As soon as this man is, I think it's 17 he has to turn to then loan him to Wolfsberger. And of course, being Austrian, it makes sense to send him back to Austria to go on loan to them. As soon as he is old enough, he will be joining Wolfsberger, and I will be starting him in every possible game, because if we can develop him, that would be glorious. Him and our other hot prospect, listed as a hot prospect, Damian Mujajic, is another striker that we've signed. This one, another one that we signed on a free transfer. And look at his value already. He's currently in our under-19s, but for a free transfer from Aalborg in Denmark, he's a Montenegrin under-21 international. And I think he has to turn 18 before we can loan him. So we're looking at October in a couple of years' time. But as soon as he can go to Wolfsberger, I'll be sending him there as well to go and be the pair of them, hopefully, to develop as strikers together. Would be really cool, wouldn't it? But I'm really happy with the squad building that we've managed to do here. I've spent £143 million, but I've managed to raise £113 million through the sales of Baku, Bornau, Grabara, Neymar. That's just the whole extra bit of this save that I've not even mentioned. We signed Neymar on a free transfer in the summer of last year. And then in the January, we've sold him back to Saudi Arabia for £15 million. We've made a £15 million profit on him. And he played 16 games, got 1 goal, 2 assists, didn't play particularly well. And we've made £15 million on him. He actually wasn't even on huge wages. He's been put on huge wages now. I think he was on like 150k for us, but he's now been put on 650k at Al Ahly. But a weird little extra story in there. I also sold Maximilian Arnold for £8 million, Zeziger for 5, and then a few other players for slightly less. And then at the end, you always have this look. If I just sort it the other way, there's all of these loans between Wolfsberger and Wolfsburg. So we've got Paul Wanner, Mora, Zezi, Krivak, Dagger, and then Griswax, and also then Mikic on there too. I showed you that in the league, we're currently second, so we're in a title race. In the Champions League, we have qualified for the playoff round. We've just beaten Porto, actually, in the first leg of that playoff round. But in the league phase, we managed to finish 12th. It was 4 points off qualifying in the top 8, but a decent first campaign for us in the Champions League. 4 wins against Sociedad Anderlecht, Salzburg and Stuttgart. We drew against Lyon and we lost to Liverpool, lost to Atletico Madrid and lost to Chelsea. I think that kind of tells us where we are as a club. We are a decent team. We can easily go and beat teams like Anderlecht and Sociedad, but when you come up against those proper big hitters in European competitions, we lost 6-2 to Liverpool, look. Losing 2-0 to Chelsea, losing 2-0 to Atletico Madrid. It feels like that's kind of where we've positioned ourselves now, but with the right recruitment, with another season of development for these young players, I can see it's just I can definitely see us pushing on next season from here. What I need to go and do now, though, is finish this season off and be back to let you know how our second season concludes here in our multi-club universe. And then maybe it's time to think about adding a third club to our network. And so our second season has been completed, and we'll start with Wolfsburg this time. We finished second again. It's Bayern Munich who have won the Bundesliga for a second consecutive season, as expected. Now, this year, we're a lot closer. Last year, we finished 16 points behind them. We actually got 77 points last year, which is quite a lot. That would have been enough to win the league this year, though. Bayern Munich actually dropped a load of points. We just weren't quite good enough to take advantage of that. There was maybe the other teams in the league have got stronger, because we finished on 71 points, 6 points lower than last year. But again, it's a second place finish. We won 21 of our games, we drew 8 and we lost 5. We actually didn't lose to Bayern Munich as well, which is the most disappointing thing. We managed to beat them. We managed to beat them 5-3 away from home. Bargi scored twice, Tobias Tell, and then Christian Gruber, the youngster. Do you remember him? He's actually been playing for us and scoring goals. I'm going to probably send him to Wolfsburger for next season, though. We actually then, I think the other game was a 0-0. Yeah, 0-0 draw at home where Quaresma got sent off in that one. So annoying not to have lost to them, but still finish 5 points off them, especially as they dropped points in 10 games. They lost 6 games, drew 4, and we still couldn't quite pit them to the title. We had a much better goal difference as well. However, it's to be expected, and it's okay, because we're here for the long term. We're going to be building towards winning this league eventually, and not winning it in the first 2 seasons. I think that's okay, isn't it? These were the remaining results for the second half of the season from about February onwards. It was a good rest of the season. We lost the final as well, the Pokal final. We lost to Bayern Munich in that one. That was the one game we lost to them this year, which is, again, it's really annoying, isn't it? In the Champions League, you saw us, we just beaten Porto 4-2. We beat them 2-1 in the second leg as well to go through. We drew Spurs, beat them 1-0 at home, Viper with the goal, and then we lost to them 4-1 away from home. They were just too strong for us in that second leg. You find it quite often in the Champions League. Teams like Spurs, you never really know how good they're going to be because, of course, in real life, they're not good. On the game, they're still quite good. And Heung-min Son's still scoring goals. Udogie scored. Kulusevski scored twice. They just outclassed us in that second leg. Only a 5.9 look from Sergio Gomez and a 6.1 from Krupi. We didn't turn up. We didn't play well. But that's okay. A round of 16 exit is very respectable for our first season back in the Champions League. And we will be back in the Champions League for next year, but having finished second now. We've actually ticked over into the new season here. I've not made any new signings yet. However, I can't show you some of the stats of the players on there. But I can't show you some of the stats of the players' appearances, goals and the like, because we have ticked over into that next season. Instead, we'll jump over to Wolfsberger, where we were once again successful in winning the league. We beat Salzburg to the title for a second successive season, this time by 1 point. Last year, we blew them out the water and they were rubbish. This year, it wasn't that they were rubbish. It was that we were actually really, really good. This one feels a lot more deserved than our first title did. But in 34 games, we won 28 of them, drew 2, only lost 4 games. One of them was to Salzburg as well. But an 86-point season is enough to win us the title. Last year, we got 73 and still won it. This year, 86. Salzburg must be livid to get 85 and not win it. A bit like when we got 77 in the Bundesliga and still didn't win it. 85 is a really good total for a 34-game season, but we got 86. So hold that, Salzburg. That's the way that cookie crumbles, isn't it? It was a great season. Again, I can't show you the stats of the players, but I can show you the squad here. No other transfer business has been done yet because instead of transfer business going on after this tick over here, before the window's actually officially opened, instead of transfer business, there's actually been an expansion to the network. Welcome to the Spineless Sports Group, Wolverhampton Wanderers. Now, this one has been tipped for quite a long time, but we have brought Wolves into our network. Kolo Touré is the new manager at Wolverhampton Wanderers, and they've been slightly spinelessified with the new badge, which Wolves fans, I know you're going to hate it, but just embrace it. It's a bit of fun. We've also got some lovely kits. Wolves fans, just be happy that I've not changed your name to Spineless Wolves. Now, yes, it's true that that's because I actually couldn't figure out a way to do it retrospectively, not because I was being respectful to your club. I've also not changed your club colours and your home kit to green, so there is that. It does have a bit of green on there on the collar, look. We've got some nice away kits and third kits. I actually need to update these club colours here, which I will do so before next video, which I will do so that this all matches up, because there are ways to do these things. Wolves, though, are on their way back to the Premier League, having just won the Championship, and it felt like the right time to add them because they're going to go into a Premier League season in a weird position where they just need to stay up, and where that puts them in our hierarchy of clubs, with Wolfsburg and Wolfsburger now in the Champions League and Wolves not in European competitions but in the Premier League, and that in itself holds a lot of prestige, doesn't it? It's going to be really interesting to build the 3 teams all in their own specific context, and I think that's going to be really fun. They've got some great players still, by the way. João Gomez is still here. They've got Liam Delap leading the line with Fabio Silva. Harvey Barnes is here, weirdly. There's loads to work with there, and I think it's going to be a really fun addition to this save. It's now going to be a 3-club multi-club save, and that, though, is where we're going to leave it for today. I will be back with another update for the next couple of seasons. We'll probably do these videos a couple of seasons at a time, but if you've enjoyed following along, please make sure you leave a like on the video and keep an eye out for the next update, probably later on this week. Please also subscribe to the channel. It really does help. And if you want to go and watch those VODs, go and check out the VODs on the second channel, Clayts 2. Go and subscribe over there. And if you want to go and have a go at doing this yourself, go and find the save file on the Patreon, and everything that you need will be over there as well. Thank you so much to my current Claytreon members. You guys are legends. You're all legends. Thank you for watching. Have a lovely rest of your day. I'll catch you in the next video. See you next time. Bye-bye.